the stage, Nadia Greenspan. Up until I was 33 years old, I had only seen one man fully naked in my life, my husband. We both came from the kind of background where you get married young, you have your kids early, and then you take turns alternating every Sunday between his parents and my parents' dinner table. You know, the kind of life where you do what you're supposed to do, keep your head down, and just try to stay out of trouble. This is not going to be that kind of story. When I turned 34, two things happened. My husband became my ex-husband, and he also became the first man I had ever seen fully naked. And this is the story about the second. But picture this first. It's 2010. I work a boring sales job that pays the bills. I am a divorced mom of 3 young kids, and this is the only way I know how to describe myself. For so long, I have only been somebody's wife and somebody's mother. I don't really know who I am anymore. So I go to the library, and I hit a self-help section hard. And I start with what I can only call a gateway drug of self-discovery of any divorced woman, Eat, Pray, Love, of course. But then I keep going, and I read Women Who Run with Wolves, Understanding Your Borderline Mother, Boundaries Galore, the Dance of Anger, the Drama of the Gifted Child, and I just keep going and going until all of these books just become this soup of advice in my head that I never use. So I do the thing that I'm scared to do the most. I give my kids to their dad for a couple of weeks, and I take a couple of weeks off, and I get a one-way ticket from Chicago to Barcelona. I rent a convertible, and I start driving east along the French coast towards Monaco. And I make myself only one rule. I am not going to tell a soul that I am a divorced mother of 3 and that I am in sales. I am going to create a whole new identity. And the first time I got to try it was on the plane. The guy sitting next to me, he asked me what I did, and I just blurted out, I said, I'm a therapist. And so for the next 7 hours, he was telling me about his life. And I want to say that this should have been a warning, but incidentally, this is how it stuck. And then throughout the trips, I've used several other identities. I would tell people that I'm a journalist or a writer, but they would still tell me their stories and not ask me too many questions. And at that time in my life, that worked for me just fine. So somewhere halfway around my trip, I'm in Marseille, and a tour guide tells me about Parc National de Colm, which is this magical place. I mean, imagine this French version of Hoth. You know, these tall cliffs and clear water, and they had poppies in bloom everywhere. Exactly the kind of place where this movie version of me would go hiking. So I go, and I bring my digital camera, and that's where I see him. He's tall, very handsome, this chiseled jaw, and he is wearing this beautiful fitted trench coat, very French, nice loafers, and he's coming towards me, except this one small detail, his legs under the coat were bare. But before I even noticed this, I am so embarrassed, but I played the whole movie of my life at that moment, the kind of movie where something unexpected and hopefully romantic happens to the main character. You know, somebody who's only kissed one boy in her life, who later married her, and then it didn't work out. Somebody who hasn't been looked at for a long time. And what could be more romantic than meeting the real love of your life on the French coast, surrounded by flowers? So we go towards each other, and our eyes locked, and I just feel the electricity in the air, and then he comes closer to me. We're about 5 meters apart, and then he opens his coat. And there you go, naked man number 2. And for a moment, everything just kind of blew up in my head. This shock and disappointment and the absurdity of the situation. And also, I have to say, just for a second, this anthropological curiosity, because he did have a very well-defined, very aesthetically pleasing physique. So the surprising part of it was that even at that moment, I knew that it had nothing to do with me. So I wasn't scared. So I blurted the phrase that I've said the most often on that trip. I looked at him and I said, "Parlez-vous anglais?" And he nodded, still holding his coat, like he's auditioning for some experimental theater. And then all that psychological soup in my head, all those self-help books that I have read just came pouring out of me. And I heard myself just blurting out, "Hey, this is not your fault. What happened to you is probably a result of some childhood trauma where something bad happened and your healthy sexuality got dewired. And so your sexual excitement is probably paired with cortisol instead of dopamine. But you know what? The good news is it's actually very treatable. And what you need to do is find yourself a good trauma therapist and make sure they have a psychodynamic background. Psychodynamic only, not CBT, God forbid. Because CBT is only about symptoms management and you need to get to the core program. And may I also recommend group therapy, because I think that this is going to be a great second step, especially for those people that talk about their sexual kinks, so you can de-shame yourself. That whole assessment took about 15 seconds. He is staring at me in shock, and then he closed his coat, kind of nodded at me, like resigned, like fair enough. And then he started walking by, and I turned around and I yelled "Bonjourné" to him because I didn't want him to feel bad, and I really wanted him to have a good day. The stranger that I met at his park wasn't him. It was me. The most surprising part, discovering that instinct that I didn't know I had at that moment, looking at any situation where most people would see something embarrassing or weird or scary, to look at it and see human pain and human vulnerability. And once I saw it, I could no longer unsee it. So it's taken many years of school and many years of training to actually make it official, but I left that trip going home and I knew exactly who I was and how to get there. I did not go to France to become a therapist, but I think the therapist was already inside of me, waiting for a naked man in a trench coat to come out of the bushes. Thank you.
Nadia Greenspan!